Most people believe poverty is about money. That belief alone is the first trap. Poverty is not a number. It is not the balance in your bank account. It is not your salary. Poverty is a force. It behaves like gravity. It pulls, it resists, it punishes upward movement. And just like gravity, it does not care about your intentions. You can wake up motivated. You can promise yourself that this year will be different. You can work harder than ever before. But if you do not generate enough force to escape the pull, you will fall back down. Not halfway, not gently, completely. This is why so many people feel like they are running in place. They are not weak. They are trapped inside a system governed by momentum. In physics, there is something called escape velocity. A rocket must reach a precise speed to break free from Earth's gravitational field. If it reaches 99% of that speed, it does not get 99% closer to space. It crashes back down. That is how poverty works. You save a little money. You start climbing out. Then your car breaks down. Then rent increases. Then inflation rises. Then you get sick. Gravity pulls you back. And the cruel part is that every failed attempt drains your fuel. You become more tired, more skeptical, more afraid to try again. Eventually, many people stop attempting to launch at all. The system does not need to conspire against you. Mathematics does the job perfectly. When you have no capital, everything costs more. You cannot buy in bulk, so you pay higher prices per unit. You cannot afford quality, so you replace cheap items again and again. You cannot access low interest rates, so you borrow at high ones. Being poor is expensive. It is a penalty box. Every mistake costs double. Every delay compounds. Every emergency becomes catastrophic. And then something worse happens. Scarcity begins to shrink your mind. Financial stress is not just emotional. It is neurological. When your brain is consumed by survival problems, your cognitive bandwidth narrows. You begin thinking about tonight's dinner instead of next decade's strategy. Your planning horizon collapses. Long-term thinking becomes a luxury. You are not making bad decisions because you are foolish. You are making reactive decisions because your nervous system is in survival mode. Poverty becomes internal. It becomes a mental operating system. Low income leads to stress. Stress leads to short-term thinking. Short-term thinking leads to bad financial choices. Bad financial choices prevent asset building. Lack of assets guarantees low income. The loop closes. The cycle repeats, and each rotation strengthens the gravitational pull. Then comes the dopamine trap. When life feels heavy, the brain searches for relief. A new phone, new clothes, eating out. Not because you are irresponsible, but because you are exhausted. Your brain releases dopamine when you spend. For a brief moment, you feel powerful, in control, seen. But the relief fades quickly and the debt remains. The pleasure lasts minutes. The payment lasts months. Consumption becomes anesthesia. You are not buying products. You are buying emotional oxygen. Meanwhile, you are trapped in the linear income model. Time equals money. Want more money? Work more hours, but time is finite. 24 hours. That is the ceiling. You cannot outwork infinity with a capped resource. Expenses rise faster than wages. Inflation erodes quietly. You are sprinting on a treadmill that increases speed every year. No matter how hard you run, you stay in the same place. There is another force at play: social gravity. You are the average of your environment. If everyone around you believes escape is impossible, that belief becomes normal. Ambition becomes strange. Discipline becomes arrogance. Growth becomes betrayal. Humans mirror behavior subconsciously. If your tribe accepts limitation, you will feel pressure to accept it too. It is easier to stay in the bucket than to endure the resistance of climbing out. But here is the truth. No one explains clearly. Poverty is not broken with motivation. It is broken with leverage. A buffer stops emergencies from becoming disasters. Eliminating high-interest debt stops reverse compounding. Skill stacking detaches income from hours. Assets create force while you sleep. When your money begins generating money, gravity weakens. When your skills become rare, your income multiplies. When your environment shifts, your mindset expands. Compound interest is either your prison guard or your engine. If you owe 20% interest, you are fighting a hurricane. If you earn 8 to 10% annually over decades, you are building a snowball that becomes unstoppable. The wealthy wake up richer because their assets are working. The poor wake up owing more because debt is working against them. Same mathematics, different direction. Stage 1 is survival. Stop the bleeding. Cut expenses brutally. Kill high-interest debt. Build a small emergency fund. Not to feel rich, but to restore cognitive bandwidth. Stage 2 is accumulation. Consistently purchase productive assets. Ignore trends. Ignore noise. Trust time. Stage 3 is freedom. When assets cover your survival costs, gravity loses its power. You no longer sell time to live. You choose how to live. Understand this clearly. Poverty is not defeated in one leap. It is escaped in phases. Each loop broken adds thrust. Each disciplined month adds fuel. Each new skill adds propulsion. Eventually, there is a moment where the engine overpowers the pull. Silence replaces stress. Options replace fear. Dignity replaces desperation. The door of the cage is not locked. It is heavy, and it requires force to push open. The system benefits when you stay reactive. Your environment feels safer when you stay familiar. Your fear prefers comfort. But physics is neutral. Generate enough thrust, and gravity cannot hold you. And this is only the beginning. There is a moment in every launch where the rocket begins to shake. The engines are firing. The structure is under pressure. The fuel is burning at maximum capacity. And from the outside, it looks violent, chaotic, dangerous. That moment is called max. Q, maximum dynamic pressure. It is the point where the rocket experiences the greatest stress as it pushes through the thickest part of the atmosphere. Most people never talk about this stage when they talk about success. They show you the orbit. They show you the view from space. They do not show you the shaking. Your financial max Q is the phase where you decide to change. It is when you cut expenses while everyone else is upgrading. It is when you stay home while others are traveling. It is when you wake up earlier to build skills after working a full shift. This is the phase where pressure increases before relief appears. And if you misunderstand this stage, you will think something is wrong. You will think the discomfort means failure. In reality, the discomfort is proof that thrust is finally being generated. Most people quit at max Q, not because they are incapable, but because they misinterpret resistance as rejection. When you stop spending impulsively, your brain protests. When you stop going out every weekend, your friends question you. When you start saying no to invitations, people feel uncomfortable. Growth disturbs equilibrium, and humans are wired to maintain equilibrium, even if the equilibrium is painful. The first real shift in escaping poverty is identity, not income. Identity. If you still see yourself as a broke person trying to get rich, you will sabotage yourself unconsciously. Your behavior always aligns with your self-image. If deep down you believe wealth is for other people, you will find ways to remain familiar with struggle. Identity drives action more than logic does. You must shift from I am poor to I am building. Those two sentences produce completely different decisions. One is fixed, the other is in motion. Language shapes belief. Belief shapes risk tolerance. Risk tolerance shapes opportunity, and opportunity compounds. Now let us talk about time differently. Poor people sell time. Wealthy people buy time. That is the fundamental transaction difference. When you sell time, your income is capped. When you buy time, through systems, automation, employees, assets, your income detaches from your physical presence. The shift from selling hours to owning systems is the bridge between survival and expansion. But systems require patience, and patience is extremely difficult when you are under financial pressure. This is why the emergency fund is not optional. It is psychological armor. When you have even 3 months of survival expenses saved, your posture changes. You negotiate, you sleep differently. You are no longer desperate. And desperation is expensive. Desperate people accept bad deals. They tolerate toxic jobs. They sign predatory contracts. Buffer equals leverage. Then there is the illusion of effort. Many people work very hard. But effort applied in the wrong direction produces exhaustion, not escape velocity. If you dig a hole deeper, digging faster does not get you out. Direction matters more than intensity. You must aim your effort toward leverage points. Leverage points are actions that produce disproportionate results. Learning a high-income skill is leverage. Building an audience is leverage. Investing consistently is leverage. Networking strategically is leverage. Complaining is not leverage. Overtime in a replaceable job is rarely leverage. Busyness is not leverage. There is a difference between motion and progress. Motion feels productive. Progress changes position. You can answer emails all day and remain stuck. You can scroll educational content and remain stuck. You can plan endlessly and remain stuck. Progress requires uncomfortable output, creating, selling, learning difficult skills, facing rejection. Rejection is another gravitational force. Many people remain poor because they fear looking foolish. They fear failing publicly. But rejection is fuel. Every no refines your approach. Every failed attempt teaches you positioning. The market does not pay effort. It pays value, and value is discovered through iteration. Now let us address inflation again, but psychologically. Inflation does not just increase prices. It increases anxiety. When groceries cost more, you feel it. When fuel rises, you feel it. This constant upward pressure trains your brain to focus on scarcity. To counteract that, you must build ownership. Ownership is the antidote to inflation. When you own productive assets, inflation works for you instead of against you. Businesses raise prices. Stocks represent ownership in companies that adjust. Real assets appreciate. Sellers adapt. Employees wait. Waiting is expensive. Another hidden trap is lifestyle creep. The moment income rises slightly, expenses expand to match it. This keeps you trapped at a higher altitude but in the same orbit. The key is widening the gap between income and lifestyle. That gap is thrust. The larger the gap, the faster you accelerate. Most people aim for comfort too early. Comfort is dangerous during the climb. Comfort reduces urgency. Urgency generates force. There is a season for comfort, but it comes after orbit, not before. Now we enter a deeper layer, mental narratives. The story you tell yourself about money determines your financial trajectory. If you believe rich people are greedy, you will subconsciously avoid becoming one. If you believe wealth corrupts, you will sabotage opportunities that lead to it. You cannot pursue what you secretly resent. You must reconcile your relationship with money. Money is not moral or immoral. It is amplifying. It magnifies who you already are. Another loop few people discuss is information overload. In the digital age, you can learn anything, but you can also drown in options, courses, podcasts, books, opinions, strategies. Paralysis becomes common. The cure is simplicity. One skill, one income expansion path, one investment strategy. Mastery comes from focus, not variety. Consistency beats intensity. $10 invested daily beats occasional large deposits. 1 hour of focused skill building daily beats weekend bursts. Momentum compounds quietly, and let us be honest about fear. Fear of losing money, fear of taking risks, fear of leaving stable jobs. Risk must be calculated, not reckless. Build skill before you leap. Build savings before you transition. Build networks before you need them. Escape velocity is prepared, not improvised. At some point in your journey, something changes internally. You stop chasing quick wins. You stop fantasizing about lottery outcomes. You begin trusting boring math, slow growth, steady investing, incremental improvement. The glamorous version of wealth is loud. The real version is repetitive. The wealthy understand delayed gratification at a cellular level. They trade short-term pleasure for long-term autonomy. Autonomy is the true reward. The ability to choose where you live, who you work with, what you say yes to. That is freedom. Freedom is not yachts. Freedom is options. As you build assets, even small ones, you will feel subtle psychological shifts. You will feel less reactive, less anxious, more strategic. This is the beginning of orbit. The silence replaces the chaos. You are no longer fighting daily fires. You are designing systems. But remember this, orbit must be maintained. Rockets in space still require correction. Wealth, once built, requires stewardship, continuous learning, diversification, risk management. The goal is not just escape, it is sustainability. And here is something most motivational speakers avoid saying. Some people will not make it, not because they cannot, but because they will not endure max Q. They will not tolerate temporary discomfort. They will not detach from social gravity. They will not delay gratification. Escape velocity demands sacrifice. The universe does not reward intention. It rewards aligned action repeated consistently over time. You do not need to be extraordinary. You need to be disciplined longer than others. You do not need genius. You need endurance. And if you can survive the shaking, if you can endure the pressure, if you can keep generating thrust while others power down, there will come a moment when the pull weakens. You will feel it. Expenses no longer terrify you. Opportunities feel accessible. Decisions feel strategic instead of desperate. That is orbit forming. That is gravity losing. And we are still climbing. Once a rocket clears the atmosphere, something strange happens. The violence stops. The shaking ends. The noise fades into silence. There's no longer resistance pushing against it. It floats. Effort that once felt overwhelming becomes minimal. Small adjustments create massive directional change. This is what most people misunderstand about wealth. The early stage is brutally difficult. The later stage is strategically simple. The problem is that almost no one survives long enough to experience the silence. The middle class lives in permanent turbulence. Not poor enough to panic, not wealthy enough to relax, just stable enough to survive, just unstable enough to worry. This is the most dangerous orbit because it feels safe. Bills are paid. There is food in the fridge. There is some entertainment. But there is no real leverage, no real acceleration. Years pass in maintenance mode, survival disguised as stability. Maintenance mode is seductive. It convinces you that you are progressing because you are not drowning. But treading water is not the same as swimming forward. Many people stay here for decades. Slight raises, slight upgrades, slight improvements. But no escape velocity, no asset engine, no exponential growth. Now we need to discuss the difference between income and ownership again, but more precisely. Income is transactional. Ownership is structural. Income requires your presence. Ownership produces results without constant supervision. When you own equity in a business, you own a machine. When you invest in index funds, you own fractions of thousands of machines. When you build digital assets, you own distribution. Machines scale, labor does not. This is why skill stacking matters more than specialization alone. The market pays for combinations that are rare. If you can communicate and understand finance, you are rare. If you can code and understand psychology, you are rare. If you understand marketing and data analysis, you are rare. Rare equals leverage. Leverage equals disproportionate rewards. Effort without leverage is exhaustion. Effort with leverage is expansion. But leverage introduces fear because it introduces responsibility. When you own assets, volatility becomes visible. Markets fluctuate. Businesses face risk. Revenue varies. Stability appears lower in the short term. This is why many people prefer wages. Wages feel stable even when they are slowly eroding. Ownership feels unstable even when it is compounding upward. Perception deceives. Let us examine risk properly. There are two types of risk: visible and invisible. Visible risk is investing in stocks, starting a business, changing careers. Invisible risk is staying stagnant for 30 years while inflation erodes your purchasing power. Invisible risk is more dangerous because it hides. You cannot see slow decline, but it is happening. Most people avoid visible risk and accept invisible risk. The wealthy reverse this. They manage visible risk and eliminate invisible risk. Another principle: cash flow is oxygen. Profit is theory. Cash flow is survival. Many businesses fail not because they are unprofitable long-term, but because they run out of cash short-term. The same applies to individuals. You might have assets, you might have potential, but if cash flow collapses, panic begins. This is why stage one always involves stabilization, emergency fund, reduced liabilities, predictable expenses. Stability is the launch pad. Once stabilized, you focus on accumulation. Accumulation requires automation. Automatic investing, automatic saving, automatic skill practice. The less willpower required, the more consistent results become. Discipline is strongest when systems replace motivation. Now let us address the psychological ceiling. Many people subconsciously limit their income because of familiarity. If you grew up around people earning a certain amount, surpassing that amount feels uncomfortable. Success can feel isolating. It can create guilt. Survivor's guilt is real. Outgrowing your environment requires emotional resilience. You must accept that growth sometimes creates distance. Distance does not mean disrespect. It means direction. Another advanced concept: time horizon determines strategy. Poor people think daily. Middle class think yearly. Wealthy think decades. When your horizon expands, patience increases. When patience increases, compounding accelerates. Short-time horizons demand quick results. Long-time horizons allow boring strategies to dominate. The stock market rewards patience. Business rewards iteration. Skills reward repetition. None reward desperation. Let us also discuss energy. Financial growth requires energy management. If you exhaust yourself constantly, you cannot think strategically. Sleep matters. Health matters. Physical strength affects mental clarity. Poverty drains energy through stress. Wealth builds energy through margin. Protect your health like capital, because it is capital. Now we reach network effects. Your relationships determine opportunity flow. Opportunities rarely come from applications. They come from connections. Not necessarily powerful friends, but aligned minds. People building, people learning, people expanding. When you shift environments, you shift standards. Standards silently dictate behavior. The internet allows you to build new environments. Digitally, communities, mentors, masterminds, you can curate your influences. This is modern leverage. Use it. Next is the concept of asymmetric bets. Small downside, large upside. Investing small amounts consistently in broad markets is asymmetric. Starting a side skill while keeping your job is asymmetric. Creating digital content with low cost but potential scale is asymmetric. Gambling your rent money is not asymmetric. Intelligent risk multiplies. Reckless risk destroys. As your assets grow, you will notice another shift. Fear decreases. Optionality increases. When you have 6 months of expenses saved, you negotiate differently. When you have 1 year saved, you think differently. When your investments cover small bills, confidence builds. This is the snowball of autonomy. Autonomy is addictive in a healthy way. It replaces the dopamine of spending with the dopamine of control. Watching your net worth grow becomes satisfying. Tracking progress becomes rewarding. The brain rewires from consumption to creation, but beware of ego inflation. Early wins can create overconfidence. Overconfidence leads to concentrated bets. Concentrated bets can erase years of progress. Stay diversified. Stay humble. Wealth is not built by excitement. It is built by consistency. Now let us zoom out to generational impact. Poverty is often generational because knowledge is generational. Wealth is often generational for the same reason. When you break the cycle, you are not just changing your life. You are altering the starting line for your children. Financial literacy becomes inheritance. Discipline becomes inheritance. Assets become inheritance. Breaking generational poverty requires long thinking. It requires planting trees you may never sit under. That level of patience is rare, but rare is valuable. There is also the matter of environment design. Your physical surroundings influence spending and productivity. If temptation is visible, resistance drains energy. Remove friction for good habits. Increase friction for bad ones. Delete shopping apps. Automate investments. Place books where you see them. Small design changes produce massive behavioral shifts. And then there is the final mindset shift. Stop asking how to get rich quickly. Start asking how to become financially unbreakable. Unbreakable means resilient to shocks, resilient to inflation, resilient to job loss, resilient to emergencies. Once unbreakable, growth becomes inevitable. The escape from poverty is not glamorous. It is mechanical. It is structured. It is patient. It is often lonely. But once orbit is achieved, the perspective changes forever. You see how small, daily decisions created massive separation over time. You realize it was never one giant leap. It was thousands of small thrusts aligned in the same direction.